I'm going to just give some context to the engagement we want to carry out over the next few months around approaches to procurement. I'm going to start by locating it in our strategy. We've published today NHS England's strategy for developing commissioning support services with some key tools, a choice app for CCGs. We've made real progress in terms of partnership working between the CSUs and Akivo, the voluntary sector, scaling up CSUs with NHS IQ, but we want to focus now actually on the procurement stuff. So we now have a strategy for developing commissioning support, we just need to actually make it a reality. So what's it all about? Well, it basically comes down to, I think, a very strong relief which Malcolm, our chairman's just echoed, which is that actually we want great outcomes. And for great outcomes, we need a great commissioning system, and we need actually great commissioners to deliver that. But for commissioners to be great, they need excellent commissioning support that they can afford. So the only goal of our strategy is to ensure that every commissioner, by which I mean CCGs and direct commissioners and ultimately local authorities, can access excellent and affordable commissioning support. And it can be sourced in-house, it can be sourced on a shared basis collaboratively between CCGs, or of course it can be outsourced through procurements with CSUs, with their partners, with the independent sector. The key thing though is that commissioning support needs to be able to actually deliver not just the usual transactional stuff, so commissioning cycle, needs assessment, specification, contract negotiation and management, but actually also commissioning for transformation. So as Malcolm said, key challenge for commissioners over the next 3 or 4 years is that leadership of major service redesign and transformation to deliver much improved outcomes and value, to start to tackle the issues around demand and making the best use of tight funding. So commissioning for transformation to deliver what I guess in old currency we'd call the quick challenges, commissioning to seriously grip quality. One of the recommendations of the Francis Inquiry that's often underlooked are the 2 or 3 around actually expecting commissioners to seriously, systematically grip quality through contracts and drive it up now. And some will be able to do that on their own, and others actually will need significant support, but it's a key issue. And hopefully not coming to you soon, but in some systems, NHS providers, FTs will fail, or there'll be other failures in the system, and there's a whole issue of what do you do actually in fact when one and all of your providers are struggling. What's the commissioning response to that? So we need highly excellent, highly competent support for commissioning around transformation, on quality, and also sadly addressing failure. We're adopting a market-based approach. I'll make no apologies for that. It's driven by our firm commitment that commissioners will have the right to choose their providers. So they get the right to choose actually how and from whom they source their commissioning support. We also want to actually adopt a market-based approach because we believe that it will help create strong incentives, much stronger incentives than currently, for commissioning support suppliers to be much more responsive to what commissioners want and need. So to develop the sort of innovative service offers that actually help CCGs in the clinical leadership role around transformation, in addressing failure, in gripping quality. And we also think it's a good way of encouraging, enabling market entry and new partnerships. So one of the things I'm delighted about today is the partnership between NHS, CSUs and Akivo, the voluntary sector playing in their expertise. NHS IQ are going to be working with CSUs to gain access to transformational skills, but we're going to need all of that, a much bigger, richer resources, including from the corporate sector, if we're really going to help CCGs drive major change around urgent care, integration, and the one we all forget about, but is pretty key, which is 24/7 services, which for a commissioner I think is a huge challenge. So that's the good reasons for adopting a market-based approach. It's also because there's already a small emerging commercial market, and we'd be stupid to ignore what that can bring. Procurement law applies to most commissioning support services. There's an expectation of fair and open competition, but there's also a but. have got a very emergent market, which is quite immature on the provider side, on the CCG side. Commissioning matters, and what we can't afford to do is to actually have chaos. So we're taking a managed approach, deliberately a managed approach to the development of the market. Why procure? Well, hopefully most CCGs in the room are aware of this. You've got a duty to ensure your buying decisions deliver value. The model constitution reiterates that when you're buying goods and services, there's a requirement for proper competition. Through a fair and transparent process, you allow suppliers then to compete against the best. I think that will create a very strong incentive, particularly for CSUs, to ensure they're meeting your needs, and CSUs are driven by their customers. And then lastly, there is a requirement in terms of evolving a market to move from SLAs to legally binding contracts, won through competition. Not because I think actually, in fact, managing through contracts is a good idea. It's a very bad idea, and normally a sign that the relationships are bad, but it is actually about moving towards a more adult and transparent relationship when CCGs know what they're buying and CSUs and other providers know what they're expected to deliver, for what and to what value. There are some key decisions that CCGs and other buyers need to make, and for anybody thinking in the room about actually wanting to go to procurement this year, there is actually a guide to the basics we've produced, which you can get from the NHS England stand or download. The three key decisions are, well, should you buy your services independently, jointly, or with other buyers? My own view would be, depending on what you want, then actually you're more likely to get better value out of providers if you're collaborating. And I think for those CCGs looking for end-to-end services, most of the commissioning cycle, that it may well actually in fact make sense to use your collective leverage. Key issue about actually what you need and how to measure quality, and then in terms of actually how you're buying, well, we've given some guidance around the OJU stuff. Although what I would say is that clearly we need to ensure that any procurement complies with OJU. I think to actually make choice happen in a way that actually meets CCG's needs but doesn't distract them, we need very, very simple procurement processes. So really moving on to that, we've done a fair amount of engagement over the last few months with CCGs, with local authorities, CSUs, social enterprise, independent and voluntary sector, and we've heard a number of things that we need to get right in our approach to procurement, which we're going to develop over the next few months. The first thing was that actually, in fact, there was a preference amongst many, but not all CCGs, for having a single procurement route via a lead supplier, who actually, in fact, way in terms of bringing in other resources. Because of that, again, many, but not all CCGs recognise the benefits of actually using some form of framework, and there's a fair degree of support, I think, certainly in the CSU provider community, for a lead provider framework approach. But we need to make sure that any approach we take, firstly, doesn't deny CCG choice, and secondly, doesn't actually, in fact, deny innovation and freeze out specialist providers. So there's a whole thing here, really, of, for lead provider, whoever's actually going to bid to be accredited needs to be clear about their partnerships and how they actually network in to get the other resources. We're very concerned that we maintain talent and we don't lose experienced staff. And there's also concerns about actually, if we're not careful, we'll end up spending a lot of money on transaction costs around procurement. And again, CCGs have expressed a varying need for some support as they go through the procurement process, but very variable. So that's sort of what we've heard so far. I'm keen that by the autumn, we've got an agreed approach to procurement, or an agreed set of approaches to procurement, that actually makes it as easy as possible for CCGs to exercise choice and providers to respond to. We've set ourselves the ambitious target between Andrew's, Kenworthy's team and mine of trying to visit virtually every CCG one way or the other between now and late August, just simply because this is so important to CCGs, and to talk more generally about commissioning support. We're very keen to get your thoughts on this. We produced a briefing document and a basic questionnaire which has been published on the website. Really want your views, but recognise it's the sort of thing you need to have a serious think about, then we need to engage with you, so I'd rather do it face to face over the next 2 or 3 months. but we do want to be in a position where we can publish our final approach or set of approaches in the autumn, because our expectation would be it's probably 2014 when most CCGs will be wanting to go out to procurement.